What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to talk about why on earth tomorrow is going to be an absolutely massive day for Tesla because we have the big FOMC meeting coming forward, and this is actually going to really affect not just Tesla but the overall market, the stock market, the economy, all going forward. I'm also going to break down the GDP reports, some earnings, the PCE reports, and talk about why on earth this week is going to be huge for the markets and their futures, but I'm going to focus more on the FOMC meeting for tomorrow. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any details, I do have to mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Don't take any of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 10 free stocks, each worth up to $2,500. And you can always sell these 10 free stocks for cash and use that cash to buy some Tesla shares for free. This is a limited time offer. It ends in just 5 days, so please check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So Tesla is down about 3.57% for the day, and it is a little bit green in the after hours, but I am taking the after hours with a grain of salt. Now, the overall market is a little bit green in the after hours, but it does not matter too much as of right now because we have the FOMC meeting. So tomorrow is the big day. If we look at the Fed calendar, the 26th through the 27th is the FOMC meeting. The first day, which was today, we had the closed board meeting, so there wasn't really too much coming out, but tomorrow is going to be the bigger day, and this is when we have the FOMC meeting going forward. This is when Jerome Powell is going to kind of announce those big rate hikes coming forward, and this is going to not just affect unemployment in America, it's going to affect our entire economy, the lives of everyday Americans. It's going to affect the stock market and all these big things. So right now the markets are essentially getting ready for a 75 basis point rate hike right over here, and it does seem like this is most likely what is going to end up happening, but there are other things we have to look out for. The eyes are going to be on Jerome Powell for tomorrow. Millions of people are going to be watching him, and he is going to be in the hot seat tomorrow because we just came out with a very, very high inflationary report from the CPI. And as a result of that, the markets, they're going to really see what Jerome Powell says. They're going to pay very, very close attention to what he says. And I do expect very crazy price action when he does start to speak. In fact, I do think right before the meeting, we may actually see a bit of a drop in the markets. It's normal, nothing necessarily new from here. And right now, the markets are actually pricing in a 75 basis point hike. And there appears to be a 75.1% probability of that 75 basis point hike. There's almost a 25% chance we get 100 basis points, and this is where things become very serious. So just to remind you guys, tomorrow at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, we have the FOMC meeting. This is when I expect crazy volatility in the markets, 2 hours, maybe like 2.5 hours. 2 hours before the market closes. This is when it's going to go crazy, and this is when Powell is going to be speaking. So as a result of this, what I think is going to happen is if we get 100 basis points, the market hasn't necessarily fully priced that in, and I do think the market is going to tank if we get that. So it's very unlikely, but it is a possibility. And if you look at this from the short term, yes, I think the market will tank if we get 100 basis points, but if we do get that right for the long term, we're actually going to see a faster recovery in the markets because the Fed would be a lot more aggressive, and we would see a big effect on the demand side of our economy, and this could actually bring down inflation a little bit faster. Now, if we don't get that right, we're probably going to get a 75 basis point hike. We'll most likely get that, and that is most likely what is going to come in general. So if that's the case, I think that the market could actually bounce based off this news. Now, is that guaranteed? The answer is no. But historically, during these FOMC meetings, what tends to happen in the markets is we drop on Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesdays we could actually get a slight green day. So I do think that's very possible, and we might get a bit of a bounce off the news about the 75 basis points, but it's not necessarily just putting us in the clear from there, because you have to remember on Thursday we have another big thing coming out, and that's the GDP report. Now, historically, when we have two negative GDP quarters consecutively, that's the indication of us entering a recession. So this is also going to be huge for the markets, and I don't necessarily know how the markets would respond to that. It's more likely we're actually going to see a bit of a drop if they are negative, and there's going to be a lot of news, a lot of FUD coming out about us being in a potential recession. And I do think that's the case, but I do also think that a lot of the damage has been priced in. So it might just be a quick reaction. It won't be as bad as some people may think. And we could actually see some kind of like improvement in the markets a little bit later on, maybe going into next week. Now on Friday, then we have Friday, because remember, Wednesday we have FOMC, right, which is tomorrow. Thursday we have the GDP report. Then Friday we have the PCE report, which is the inflationary report from the Fed. And I do think this is going to be a big improvement for the markets. So it's very likely we may see a better day for Friday. Now, this is all just based off this data alone. We also have earnings coming out, right? Earnings are going to be very, very massive, particularly for Thursday during the after hours, because we have two tech giants, I think, reporting their earnings too, such as Amazon and Apple for Thursday. For tomorrow, we also have some big reports coming out. I think Intel and Ford are going to be reporting as well. So be prepared for that, but that's actually going to come in the after hours, so it won't affect us as much. And today we had Microsoft actually report their earnings, and they actually missed on earnings per share just by a little bit. They were like 6 cents away. They also missed on revenue by 0.6 billion. So overall, we are seeing some misses now starting to show, and this is not the best for the markets, but it is good for the long term because it's showing a bit of a slow in demand from the consumer side. And that's exactly what we want. That's what the Fed wants. They want this to be very gradual without causing a massive, massive Great Depression. They want us to slowly see demand drop, which will in turn bring down inflation over the next couple of months. Now, I can't guarantee that inflation has peaked just yet, but it does seem quite likely that that may be the case, as I do anticipate a lower CPI and PCE report coming out next month, or even just in the next couple of days. So with that said, how is all of this going to affect the market and Tesla? Well, something very interesting happened today in the markets, and it's actually kind of a good sign. Let me actually find my SPY chart. I don't know where I put it. It's right here. Yeah. So looking at the SPY, if I look at the 2-hour time frame, you'll notice something very interesting. So when we have these FOMC meetings, what the market tends to do is it tends to tank and then kind of get a bounce a little bit later. There have been other meetings where we actually rose a bit and then tanked more later, depending on how it goes. So what I think could end up happening to SPY is we might actually see this thing drop a little bit more tomorrow and then get a nice bounce. It's very possible we get a bit of a bounce. We might actually push up a little bit to these higher levels. What else is a very weird coincidence? Let me see if I can show this to you in more detail. We have this big gap right here for SPY. So I'm not sure if the SPY is bound to just like fill this gap up here first and then start tanking later on, because right now this gap just formed like today. We actually gapped down today, so it is possible that we might actually fill the gap tomorrow if things are good enough, but I can't guarantee that because we have a gap down here. So for SPY in particular, this is what I'm essentially seeing, and this is going to be more of like a long-term prediction. What could end up happening is a more bullish possibility. This would require a 75 basis point hike, in my opinion. If we get 75 basis points and the market responds positively, the SPY might slowly rally like this up here, and then it might start to kind of drop a little bit later like this. That's very much possible. And then we kind of rally like that. And if that isn't the case, right, if the market is a lot more bearish, let's just say somehow we get a report that's even worse than anticipated. Let's just say we get 100 basis points. The whole market could start to drop and the SPY could fill the gap down here first, then get a bounce off like 380, and then slowly start to push right back up to that 395 level and fill the gap up here. I see these as being the two most probable possibilities. And as a result of the SPY kind of moving like this, Tesla may actually follow it to some degree, because Tesla did something very strange too. If we look at what happened today, Tesla formed a gap right over here. We gapped down as well. So what I'm seeing Tesla doing is, I'm not sure about what on earth exactly it's going to do because it's very dependent on the data. If we get 100 basis points, just hypothetically, okay? If we are surprised, if Jerome Powell has to be more aggressive, if the market ends up doing that, Tesla is going to plummet like this, and we're most likely going to fill the gap down here like really quickly in one day if we get that 100 basis point hike. And then Tesla would slowly, in my opinion, get a bounce somewhere. I don't know if we're going to stop at like 730. We could go even lower than that, maybe like down here. Then we might see a slight recovery going into like August, and Tesla will actually push right back up to that 800 level because that's where we have a gap up here. And we could fill this gap going into that like the stock split before we get a bit of a rejection somewhere like here, and then kind of continue down just like this. So just to draw this out in maybe a more like meticulous manner, this is essentially something we could see if we do see Tesla tank. We could fill the gap down here first and then get a bounce later. But let's just say we get a better report, in my opinion. So let me change the color for you. Let's just say hypothetically, we get a 75 basis point hike and the market actually responds very positively to it. It's also possible for Tesla to slowly push up and actually fill the gap up here at about 804, maybe 805. We get a rejection. Then we slowly start to drop again, just like this. And we end up filling the gap down here in that 730, 740 level before we get a bounce for the stock split and kind of continue from there, just like this. So I'm essentially drawing out two main possibilities, and it's very difficult for me to really predict this because it is dependent on what we really see for tomorrow. But if we do get that 75 basis point hike, a move like this would be a little bit more probable. Tesla actually pushing up, maybe filling the gap up here, then getting a rejection. But if we do get 100 basis points, if the Fed is even more hawkish, it's very likely the whole market is going to tank for the next couple of days and maybe for the remainder of the week. And we could see Tesla drop to the low 700s like really hard because the whole market would kind of be shocked by that. That's the uncomfortable truth. So that's essentially how I'm seeing it. But what is good is we have this gap up here. So it's very likely Tesla might fill this gap again relatively soon. I mean, that's essentially how I'm seeing it, but I can't really predict it perfectly because it's dependent on the Fed. It depends on all this data. We also have earnings coming out. Like I mentioned, Microsoft just had their earnings. They kind of missed on that, yet the market is still green in the after hours. So it should be okay. I mean, I don't think earnings are going to be as impactful, at least for tomorrow compared to the data that's coming out. I think for Friday, earnings will be more impactful because we have the big dogs reporting their earnings like Amazon and I believe it's Apple. So that's essentially what I'm seeing in the markets. Earnings are going to be pretty big, but the data coming out will be bigger. And I do see these being the two main possibilities for Tesla, depending on the reports that come out. I do think a move like this is a little bit more likely, though. I think it is possible Tesla might push up a bit for tomorrow if we do get a pretty decent move. But like I said before, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a perfect green day. I just think that it is possible for us to fill the gap up here within the next like 2 days. It still is possible before us getting that rejection. However, there are other things I want to warn you guys about because the FOMC meeting is going to be at 2 o'clock p.m. So as we approach the meeting, expect crazy volatility, expect the market to actually tank right before it. And then if Powell announces good things, if we only get a 75 basis point hike, the market could rally off that. And that's essentially where I came to this conclusion of Tesla possibly filling the gap up to like the low 800s before getting another rejection and continuing to actually drop from there and filling the gap down here. So I know it's a little bit complicated. I'm going to actually kind of restate this in a much simple manner. If we get 75 basis points, right, if the market does respond positively, going into the FOMC meeting, the market's going to be very volatile and crazy. Tesla's going to drop a bit, but if they announce 75 basis points, then for I would say Thursday or the next day, we could end up like pushing up, filling this gap, then dropping from there. If not, if we get 100 basis points, I expect the whole market to tank, including Tesla, and Tesla's going to drop kind of like how this red line is right here. Now, this is not necessarily taking into account how the GDP report will come out as well. I mean, I don't know if the market's going to just tank if it is negative. That is very possible too. If not, if the market already like saw this coming, it's not a guarantee either. So really, it's very tricky to really predict everything as of right now because it's dependent on data. I am a little bit more on the bullish side for the end of the week, though. I do think the market might kind of recover a little bit because the PCE won't be as bad. But this is essentially how I'm seeing this really playing out. I apologize if this was a little bit confusing. The market is sometimes very confusing. I understand that sometimes the market could rally when you least expect it, or even like drop even on good news. So be prepared for anything. I want to let you know that we have resistance at 800, then around like 820 to 830, then 858 is the very strong resistance level. And support is going to be, if we do end up dropping lower, support is going to be at around that 750 range, then 740, which is where this gap is, and as low as 730. So be prepared for these key support and resistance levels. Be prepared for anything. And just note that the market is more likely to actually bounce if we get a 75 basis point hike and actually start to push up. If we get 100 basis points, expect the market to most likely drop. And that's essentially how I'm seeing it. With that said and done, thank you for listening. Please have a great rest of the day and be prepared for tomorrow. It's going to be a crazy day. And with that out of the way, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon, and peace out.